بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه من سيئات أعمالنا ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of all creation and all the worlds. We praise Him, we ask His assistance, we repent to Him for the shortcomings that we have committed. We greet and salute the Holy Prophet of Islam, the most noble of all prophets, and his pure progenies. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, you are all well, safe, and keeping yourself protected. يقول الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن الحكيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. صدق الله العلي العظيم. This part is the second part of the Tafsir or commentary on Surah Al-Fajr, the chapter 89th of the Holy Quran. 2 weeks ago, we started with the commentary of the early part, and we stopped at the point in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded us of a unique misconception for those who associate wealth with favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and poverty or absence of wealth for being somehow disfavored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But before we got to this part of the chapter, there were a number of sub-themes within the surah that we addressed and talked about. Number one, that the surah was Makki. All the indication, all the signs are from the surah that it was a Makki surah. Then the important early morning prayers for humans to spend, or for believers to spend that early, late night and early morning prayer, early morning time in offering prayer, supplication, and getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was discussed, which we talked about Salat al-Layl and few other things. and a number of other nights in the year, whether the 10 nights of the Hajj or last 10 nights of Ramadan. We briefly addressed them. Then Quran proceeded to talk about 3 nations that repeatedly in the Quran we come across them. Whenever examples, Quran wants to give example of nations that had all the wealth, all the power, all the position. Despite everything that was granted to them, they became disobedient, arrogant, and somehow did not submit to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what happened to them in the case of Ad, Thamud, and Fir'aun? The chapter then proceeds with this misconception that we talked about briefly last week. The idea that somehow there is a direct relationship between wealth and favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and between poverty or the absence of wealth with disfavor and somehow an insult from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The troubling part of this part, or the central theme that Quran presents here, is that when such misconceptions then being used by individuals, whether they are powerful, they possess that wealth or the bounty that Allah has granted to them, or those who do not possess it, to become arrogant rather than show their responsibility and how this blessing that Allah has given to them, that it should be spent, they use it in the different way, in the negative way, that since now wealth is a sign of favor, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us wealth, then we are in a favorable status with regard to Allah, we can do whatever we want. The Jewish community, if you look at a number of verses in the Holy Quran, exactly talks about this kind of relationship. They claim that their ancestors had a covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah chose them to be the best of the nations. But they forgot about that covenant was contingent on them submitting to the command of Allah. It's not an absolute open-ended commitment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Jewish community. So they used it because a covenant was signed by their ancestors, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to their ancestors, Prophet Moses, etc., then they can use it in any way, shape, or form. The truth, this misconception once is addressed, Quran moves into a different kind of approach or a strategy to make this clear. That this world, wealth, as well as all other aspects in this world, is in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah uses it to test humanity. This notion is repeatedly talked about in the Holy Quran. إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا مَا عَلَى الْأَرْضِ زِينَةً لَهَا لِنَبْلُوَهُمْ أَيُّهُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. Everything that we have granted to this earth as an ornament, ultimately so that we test those who are better in deeds. Or وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. We are going to test you with little bit of fear, hunger, loss of wealth, lives, and fruits, so that we see who is going to be patient. We give good tidings to those who are being patient. The notion that the relationship between, which by the way, 2 weeks ago when I talked about this, I pointed out that unfortunately in the West now it has become a unique theological construction that is called the theology of affluence. God has given us all the blessing that we want, wealth, power, food, everything, sustenance. then we are the favored nation on earth, no matter what we do. This repeatedly comes in various verses in the Holy Quran. وَلَئِنْ أَذَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنَّا رَحْمَةً ثُمَّ نَزَعْنَاهُ مِنْهُ إِنَّهُ لَيَئُوسٌ كَفُورٌ. There are those that we grant them certain privileges and then we remove it back from them. So long as they have the privilege, they find themselves happy with their position, and they feel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is favoring them. But once we remove them, they become ungrateful and despondent. The verse after this, 9 and 10 of Surah Hud, وَلَئِنْ أَذَقْنَاهُ نَعْمَاءَ بَعْدَ ضَرَّاءَ مَسَّتْهُ. And if the reverse, we somehow put them in a test of hardship and affliction and trial, and then open the door of blessing to them, لَيَقُولَنَّ ذَهَبَ السَّيِّئَاتُ عَنِّي إِنَّهُ لَفَرَحٌ فَخُورٌ. Then all the shortcomings have gone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now looks upon us as with Allah's favor. So it's misconception that leads to being sinful, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted you certain privilege or granted us certain privileges, is rejected by the Holy Quran. Quran wants to tell us whether we have poverty or whether we have riches, we are being tested to see whether we will fulfill our responsibility in either of these two circumstances. When we have the riches, whether we become, the verses that come after clearly indicates, when you become rich, what you're supposed to do. When you become affluent and wealthy, what are your responsibilities? And in the same manner, when you become poor and destitute, how you should behave. So Allah wants to test everyone to see whether we fulfill our responsibilities and our duties towards those that Allah has granted us the privilege to be the medium by which we have to look after the others. This concept of affliction, pain, and so on, as a trial in human life is not something that is unique to Islam. Most of the Abrahamic faith, Judeo-Christian tradition as well as Islam, Quran, we know about it. But in Jewish tradition as well as Christian tradition, we have narratives that talk about this. For example, Paul, in a letter to his disciples, he states, the notion that we should be carried through life on a flowery beds of ease, entering into the kingdom of heaven without trial is not possible or feasible. We have no other alternative. Similar to this understanding, Ya ayyuhal insan, innaka kadihun ila rabbika kadhan famulaqi. The path Paul uses, or Christian uses, kingdom of God, or the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is full of trial and testing that we have to go through. Where we differ with, say, Christian tradition or Jewish tradition and Islamic tradition is that the Jewish and the Christian tradition primarily talk about or opt for some kind of an exchange here and the hereafter. You are being tested in this world, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reward you in the hereafter. Islam does not approach it from an exchange taking place. You have to accept pain here for the hereafter, ease in the hereafter. Far from it. Islam, it says that it takes faith of a higher order, an above average belief, to count pain as a joy. Then you open your heart. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you, you joyfully and willingly accept it. To reach that level, we human have to go through various stages and deal with various trials and tribulation. Yusr and usr. If you remember, some times ago when we were talking, inna ma'al usri yusra, inna ma'al usri yusra, some people, some commentators talked about some kind of a sequential relationship, that first comes usr. Once usr is over, yusr comes. Inna ma'al usri yusra. A number of commentators have understand this differently. Usr and yusr have a dialectical relationship, that they intertwine with each other in a dialectical manner. So every portion of usr has a portion of yusr within it. You cannot reach yusr if you have not gone through usr. This is why there are a number of verses talks about this constant testing of individuals. So this dialectical relationship or intertwined nature is primarily for one's benefit. Now, we have to ask ourselves, people ask, why are we being tested? Well, let's use some metaphor on our ordinary life, and then we see how this testing fits in the way we perceive and understand. In daily life, let me start with an example. I'm planning to travel, and I'm searching for a group of people that would come with me, but I want to establish whether they are in the right state of mind. They have the forbearance, they have the patience, they are resilient, they are prepared to work and share responsibilities. So what do? I select a number of people and I put them through tests. Inadvertently, without telling them, I ask them to do certain tasks and then find out. Because if I am going through this journey and I need my partners, all people that are working with me, to be there to support each other, the weak point is going to break the relationship. So I want to make sure who has the required characteristics before I start the journey. If you go and read the stories about the discoveries of the South Pole and so on, when the ship got stuck in the ice, what happened? Some people could not tolerate it and went non-linear, as they say, and other people worked hard trying to succeed. So this is one reason for why we test people, to establish whether they are qualified, whether they are capable of taking the task. Sometimes you test people so that they discover themselves in what level they are in. A teacher, a professor, somebody comes to the class and gives a test, trying to establish every student's where they are in the whole strategy of the class and the goal. Not only teacher finds out for herself or himself, the students find out as well. Once the grades come in, then they have to sit down in reflection. Testing of individual in this life by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is neither this or the other one. Why? Because both of them are contingent on a degree of ignorance. Either I don't know about my prospective partners or colleagues, or the teacher doesn't know where they stand vis-a-vis the class. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests so that it creates the ground. Remember, we talked about this somehow in the past. The essence of humans are the soul. Physically, you can develop in any shape or form. But if the soul is not developed properly, is not strengthened properly, is not ready to move and elevate itself, then it fails. So testing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to establish the ground in which for us to develop and elevate ourselves vertically, go closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This by going through difficulties in life. Every difficulty that we go through, if we react to it or respond to it in a positive manner, it strengthens our resolve, and we stand up much. You understand, there is a hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullah salam alayhi that says our Shi'as are divided into three different types. There are those who it's a fab for them to become a Shia. It's a lifestyle that they choose, but they're really not adherent to any principle. There are others who are like a sheet of glass, clear. But the first knock and they shatter to pieces. The third are like gold, pure gold. You dip them in fire and you take them out, they shine. Look at the life of our Imam. All the calamities that they went through, never complained. Always, ridan biridak. We submit to your will. It's a joyful position to be that you are testing us and you want to establish our resolve. So this is a totally different. It's for us to be able to elevate ourselves. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would test. This is why in the verse that I recited earlier, Ubashir as-sabirin, so that we want to see, for you want to see, or Allah wants to give good tidings to those who are patient and understand their position and why they are being tested. Once this misconception has been dealt with, then Quran proceeds to a different approach to remind people that they still hold to this position of the relationship between wealth and favor, and the relationship between poverty and so on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking the question indirectly. It says that how can you claim that you are now in the possession of favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or you have been absolved or vindicated or exonerated when the basic relationship and your duties to the other people, to the poor and the needy, you neglect and you ignore? How can one claim special favor when the basic feeling towards the poor, the needy, the orphans are ignored and not shown? Not only that, you go even to the extreme of showing contempt for the poor and the needy. Where is the justification for such a claim? To orphan, بَلْ لَا تُكْرَمُونَ الْيَتِيمِ. Karama here means honor. Here Quran doesn't say go and feed them and deal with them properly. The orphans should possess a degree of honor and dignity within the society, and you do not show that dignity and karama towards them. They are not in favorable status. They don't have the honor that they should have within the society. Not only that, وَلَا تَحَاضُّونَ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. You do not even encourage each other. Not only go, you see again here, the verse in the Holy Quran doesn't say go and feed the poor. It says you have to encourage yourself, encourage each other for feeding and respecting. Not only you or us, we feed the poor, we have to encourage each other to urge and exhort each other to do something together, whether it is helping the needy or anything else. ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما. Lam here means to hoard and grab and simply pack everything, all the wealth that you can see. You are so infatuated with life, with wealth, that everything else is ignored and will be done for the sake of that wealth. Lust for money, lust for wealth, lust for this life has blinded you to the degree that you are indifferent to the moral values that you're supposed to implement and possess in life. So overcome with the obsession for wealth that the higher values are completely ignored. This is why Quran makes a list. Your relationship with the orphan is despicable. Your attitude towards the needy is contemptuous. You hoard wealth as much as possible, even at the expense of leaving all the moral values out. As they say, by hooks or by crooks, it doesn't matter whether the means by which you collect the wealth is permissible or not, as long as the quality increases. وَتُحِبُّونَ الْمَالَ حُبًّا جَمًّا. The criteria by which it dictates your life is wealth. And this was something that existed during the life of Jahiliyyah and exists today. Quran is trying to challenge that mindset. Unfortunately, we see it in our daily life. We are chasing American dream and constantly thinking about money and nothing else, at the expense of all the moral values, without thinking that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted me wealth for a reason, so that I become the conduit by which the poor, the needy, the orphans and other marginalized within the society, they get their shares. وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. So where is that haqq given to the individuals? Now, once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them that with such a gaping hole in your character and absence of the moral value, how can you claim to be in a favorable position to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Then moves the conversation towards a known theme that we have talked about before in the short surahs in the past. If you continue doing this, on the day of judgment, you are going to find out where you stand. But here, كَلَّا إِذَا دُكَّتِ الْأَرْضُ دَكًّا دَكًّا. Nay, never. This relationship is rejected. Wait until the end of time comes. In the day of resurrection, you will find out that all this yearning and folly for the material life is fruitless. This theme that the earth is going to be pounded and at the end of time is something that we have come across before. كَلَّا إِذَا دُكَّتِ الْأَرْضُ دَكًّا دَكًّا وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ وَالْمَلَكُ صَفًّا صَفًّا. On that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to present itself with all the malaika. Here, commentators have gone literally, their mind has gone all over the place. Exactly how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what does that mean? وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ وَالْمَلَكُ صَفًّا صَفًّا. There are some, they say, well, Allah is going to reveal itself, Allah's self, but we really don't know. It's part of the mutashabahat in Quran. Others have clearly indicated that this is not possible. When we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala coming, it's about the power of Allah, the glory of Allah, etc., etc. So all the malaika are standing up in attention when the glory of God is presented to them. It's trying to make all the picture about the day of judgment. وَجِيءَ يَوْمَئِذٍ بِجَهَنَّمَ. Jahannam and hell is brought forward. It's not as if it was absent. For these people that lived in the material, shackled to the material life, the notion of Jahannam, heaven and everything else was absent from their mind. Suddenly they see the veil is removed and they are confronted with the power and glory of God on one side and the punishment on the other. Once they see this, then they regret. يَوْمَئِذٍ يَتَذَكَّرُ الْإِنسَانُ وَأَنَّى لَهُ الذِّكْرَى. That's too late. يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي. Yes, once a human realized that this is now a permanent abode, they think, okay, I wish I had sent something for this permanent life. It's too late. In the story of Pharaoh, when the miracle closed, whether it's the Nile, Red Sea, or whatever, the water closed and he was almost the end of his life, drowning. What did he say? Now I accept what Moses has come and the God of Moses. Respond? Never. It's too late now. Now that you can see the future and the end, what will happen to you, your tawbah and is not going to be accepted. فَيَوْمَئِذٍ يَتَذَكَّرُ. Human should come to think at that time. But this kind of thinking that should have happened during this life, leaving it until the last minute in the hereafter, فَيَوْمَئِذٍ لَا يُعَذَّبُ عَذَابَهُ أَحَدٌ. Because repentance there is not going to be useful, the punishment is going to be severe. Nobody on the day of judgment is going to punish individuals as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to do. There is a debate between scholars and commentators regarding the pronoun يُعَذِّبُ عَذَابَهُ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَا يُعَذِّبُ عَذَابَهُ أَحَدٌ, whether it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reference or to the individuals that have violated the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether here it refers that Allah is going to punish severely those who disobeyed, or Allah is going, the individuals will be punished. These individuals that the list clearly indicated will be punished. It's not a general rule. And then Quran proceeds to something else. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. During the early part of Ramadan, when we were talking about various surahs, I think it was probably the second or the third night, I pointed out that inshallah next week we will address this. Humans, the Holy Quran addresses 3 different types of position of nafs. There is only one nafs. But how you train that nafs and how much space, lateral or vertical, you give to the nafs, positions or speaks about the position of the soul. If the nafs is nafs al-ammara, which means that the lust of material life dictates to the soul how the soul should behave. So the soul is shackled to the desires and egos and lust of this material life. This is nafs al-ammara, the controlling nafs. However, if through training, we talked about calamities, trial and so on, through training we begin to elevate ourselves and release and free ourselves from the shackle of ego, lust and everything else. We elevate in position, spiritual position, and we reach finally nafs al-lawwama. Nafs al-lawwama, still not high enough, but is much higher than nafs al-ammara. It's a nafs or a unique position of the soul in which, yes, we commit sin, but at the same time, immediately we become regretful or remorseful for the shortfall and the sinfulness and disobedience of Allah. When you sit down to reflect, it's as if your soul comes back to tell you, why did you do this? Why did you lie? Why did you backbite? Why did you become angry? Why did you didn't control your eyes and tongues and everything else? Why did you insult others? Why all these whys does not come from nafs al-ammara. Nafs al-ammara says, do it. It's one life you have, you might as well maximize the benefit from it. Nafs al-lawwama reminds you of the hereafter, accountability to a degree. Nafs al-mutma'inna is the highest level of nafs, which soul has a degree of peace in this level. And this peace comes through true ma'rifah and understanding of Allah, remembrance of Allah, and the stronger the relationship and the stronger the certainty that we have towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the more heart and the soul is at peace. Ala bi dhikrillah tatma'innul qulub. Qalb here is the soul, the center of the soul. If you want stability, you search it and you find it only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This material life is a transient life. You either spend it for the hereafter, and so that on the day of judgment you don't say, Ya laytani qaddamtu li hayati. Otherwise, if you spend it here, then there is nothing further on the permanent abode, either barzakh or in the hereafter. Nafs mutma'inna is a nafs that reaches the highest level and is at peace. Even the Prophet Ibrahim was asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he asked Allah to show him how he resurrects the dead, Allah asked him, don't you believe? But he said, لِيَطْمَأَنَّ قَلْبِي, so that my heart reaches that peaceful, stable relationship. So once you reach that position, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yes, you have done everything possible. You have elevated yourself to the highest level. Naturally, idkhuli fi ibadi, you are the example, the creme de la creme, Khalifatullah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to create. You represent it, you manifest those. And Jannah is going to be your reward. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us in this challenging life that we have. It's difficult. The temptations in life is immense and frequent. The only thing we can do, as Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salamu alayhi said, there are two types of taqwa. The first taqwa, you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give it to you, and the second, you use that taqwa to become more mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your life. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us that component of taqwa that Allah gives to good people. And then we take it from there, inshallah, we use it to generate or strengthen our relationship with Allah. May Allah protect you all. Please be safe. The situation is not going away. Please be safe. Look after yourself. Every step that we have done so far, we have to continue doing it until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings faraj for everyone. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.